The little alien's cries were nearly drowned out by the drunken jeers of the Iridian thugs viciously beating him in that dark alley. The cruel mob, not believing the human veteran's pleading shouts echoing off the corroded metal walls, but the human would defy death itself to rescue this one innocent believer. Only 5 years after the Earth-Iridian War, most humans avoided this seething alien planet, content to forget the horrors both sides inflicted upon each other. But Ricky Grant couldn't forget. His dingy apartment in the factory sector and mind-numbing work-assembling starship engines offered no relief from searing memories of charred comrades and cities, so he drank to forget, stumbling home through hostile alien slums, praying his scarred human face went unrecognized. Until that night. Ricky heard the screams and almost kept walking. Getting involved meant certain death for a human, but something snapped when he saw the thugs beating a helpless Iridian child. His instincts, honed by Earth's most brutal battles, cut through the alcoholic haze. He charged the alley bellowing like a man possessed. 7-foot reptilian monsters, almost twice his size, gleaming scales and vicious claws. Ricky felt bones shatter as his scarred fists found soft flesh. The thugs scattered like roaches, yellow eyes wide with shock and fear. Ricky scooped up the whimpering child, wincing at his injuries, and fled the alley. As he sprinted through the tangled metal warrens of the slum, the mob's jeering echoed behind him, growing louder and angrier. Hundreds of murderous Iridians stalked him through the night city, livid that a lowly human would dare strike a Iridian, even to save a child. Ricky's lungs burned as he pounded up the stairs to his 10th-floor hovel. He dumped the limp child on the cot and worked feverishly to stabilize him, knowing the mob would find them soon. As Ricky bandaged the gashes, he saw what the child still clutched to his chest, a human doll made of rags, an unthinkable heresy in this alien empire. And so Ricky's impossible mission began, to guide this one young believer to safety through a hostile city thirsting for their blood before the authorities seized them or the mob ripped them to shreds. The mob's angry shouts echoed off the rusted metal walls as Ricky snatched up Quasar and bolted down a trash-strewn alley. The hulking Iridians thundered after them, clawed feet pounding the pavement. Ricky ducked and wove through the industrial labyrinth, his heart hammering in his ears. They ducked inside the gaping maw of an automated factory, the screech of machinery drowning out their ragged breathing. Ricky pulled Quasar behind a conveyor belt, both of them crouching low. But Quasar let out a strangled yelp, clutching his side. The mob's voices grew louder. They'd been heard. "Run!" Ricky hissed, dragging Quasar out a side door. They fled down corridors and up fire escapes, the Iridians always just behind them, baying for blood. Ricky shoulder-checked a door to an abandoned warehouse, and they staggered inside. As Ricky shoved crates against the doors, Quasar slumped against the wall, trembling. "Why are they after you, kid? What did you do to piss them off so bad?" Ricky demanded as he wedged a metal pipe to bar the door. "They killed my brother," Quasar whispered, his voice choked. "Zephyr, for having human things. Lots of us collect them, trade them in secret. Zephyr found this doll. Those thugs, they're purists. They hunt us down." Ricky opened his mouth to reply when an explosion rocked the warehouse. A Iridian attack skiff smashed through the far wall in a shower of twisted metal. Ricky dove, tackling Quasar behind a pillar as a plasma cannon whined to life. Superheated plasma rained down, disintegrating their flimsy cover in seconds. There was only one way out now. Ricky scooped up Quasar and sprinted for the skiff, plasma scorching the air around them. He leapt, landing hard on the skiff's deck, and slammed the throttle forward. The engines roared as they blasted through the gaping hole, the warehouse collapsing into a heap of molten slag behind them. But the gang had skiffs too. In seconds, a swarm of attack craft were on their tail, plasma cannons lighting up the smoggy night. Ricky jammed the throttle to maximum, sending their skiff hurtling between skyscrapers at insane speed. The whole craft shuddered as plasma hammered their shields, alarms blaring. They couldn't take much more. Ricky wrenched them into a steep dive, corkscrewing madly as they plummeted, chased by the searing plasma bolts. At the last second, he leveled out and plunged their dying skiff into a massive tunnel mouth, yawning in the city's bowels. Metal shrieked and tore as they skidded along the tunnel floor in a shower of sparks. The skiff ground to a smoking halt, its hull peeled open like a tin can. Ricky pulled a shell-shocked Quasar from the wreckage, and together they limped off into the dark tunnel, the way ahead a mystery. Ricky and Quasar stumbled through the dark maintenance tunnels, straining to see by the dim glow of ancient guidelights. Around a bend, they spotted the hunched form of a Iridian huddled by a sputtering heating unit. The vagrant looked up sharply as they approached. His eyes went wide with fear seeing Ricky's human face. He scrambled to his feet, hissing. "Wait," Quasar cried, holding up his hands. "Please, we need help. There's a mob after us." The vagrant paused, looking between them suspiciously. "A human with a Iridian child? Explain yourselves." Ricky stepped forward. "I'm Ricky. I saved Quasar from a gang. They're hunting us now." The Iridian stared at Ricky for a long moment. "I am Zothor. I once served on the Iridian warship Scimitar. During the war with your kind, we were crippled by human forces and left stranded for months." Ricky's breath caught. "Impossible." "The Scimitar. My unit, we're the ones who disabled that ship." Zothor nodded slowly. "Yes, and yet, instead of letting us starve, you humans risked your lives to bring us supplies. I never understood why. We couldn't just let you die out there. Not if we could help." That act of compassion, it changed me. Made me question everything I'd been taught about humans. I deserted not long after. I've been living as an outcast since. Ricky put a hand on Zothor's shoulder. The Iridian flinched but didn't pull away. "Please, Zothor. Quasar needs to get home. His family is in danger too. Can you help us?" Zothor looked at Quasar for a long moment, then sighed. "Very well. I can guide you as far as the access hatch to the old transport tunnels. After that, you're on your own." He led them through a dizzying maze of passages, before finally stopping at a concealed hatch. "Through here, keep heading south. You'll reach the Sector 12 junction, near the boys' home." "Thank you, Zothor," Ricky said. The aged Iridian shook his head. "No, human, thank you, for showing me the truth." With that, he turned and vanished back into the gloom. After hours navigating the crumbling, abandoned tunnels, they finally emerged into a trash-strewn alley. Quasar pointed to a shabby dwelling. "There, that's my home." Ricky followed Quasar to the door. It flew open and two adult Iridians rushed out, eyes wide with shock. "Quasar, we thought... And who is this? A human?" "Marda, this is Ricky. He saved me from the purists. They want to kill him." Quasar's father, Xander, quickly ushered them inside, bolting the door. "Quasar, you're all over the news nets. They're saying a human kidnapped you. There's purity gangs and military all over, hunting for him." Xander turned to Ricky, voice low and urgent. "The gangs are arresting anyone suspected of being human sympathizers. You have to leave now. It's the only way. I can hide Quasar, but if they find you here..." Suddenly, an amplified Iridian voice boomed from outside, making them all jump. "Human fugitive, we have the sector surrounded. Surrender immediately, or everyone here will be considered collaborators and face summary execution." Heart-pounding, Ricky peered out a window. Iridian soldiers swarmed the streets, attack skiffs hovering above, weapons trained on the buildings. There was no escape. "The tunnels," Xander said urgently, voice low. "Old smuggler's route. Should get you clear of the sector. Military sensors will pick up any movement, though." Ricky's jaw tightened. No choice. "I'll make a break for it. Draw him off. Give you and the kid a chance." Quasar gripped Ricky's arm, small claws digging in. "No, they'll kill you." Ricky pulled the boy into a fierce hug. "Gotta be this way, kid. Your family needs you." Footsteps thudded up the stairs. Xander hissed, "They're searching the building. We're out of time." The door burst open. They whirled, ready to fight. But it was Zothor with a dozen Iridian youths. "Zothor, what are you doing here?" Ricky asked. "We're with the network, here to help." Zothor gestured to the youths. A wiry female with tattered clothes stepped forward, tools jangling from her belt. "I'm Zilia. I can hack the military drones, make a blind spot in their sensor net. Should give you a shot. She crouched, dumping salvage components on the floor. Clawed fingers flew, rewiring and splicing. Outside, an amplified voice boomed. This is your final warning. Surrender the human or we open fire in 1 minute. Zilia, Ricky growled. Almost there, she hissed through gritted fangs. A jury-rigged device blinked to life in her hands. Got it. Sensors are jammed, but it won't last. Run now. Ricky grabbed Quasar's hand and sprinted for the tunnel. Plasma fire erupted, slamming into the walls. They vaulted down into the dark passage. Shit! Zilia screamed. A pursuit drone latched into the network. It's... A plasma bolt seared past Ricky's face. The drone shrieked after them, autonomous combat protocols blazing to lethal life. Quasar stumbled. Ricky shoved the boy ahead, just as the drone fired again. White-hot agony exploded through Ricky's leg as he fell, taking Quasar down with him. The stench of charred flesh. Ricky! Quasar screamed. Keep going, kid, don't stop. Ricky shoved himself upright on the wall, dragging his ruined leg. The drone whirred closer, glowing a merciless red. Suddenly a plasma bolt from behind blasted the drone to scrap. Ricky gaped. Xander stood at the tunnel mouth, rifle smoking in his hands. Xander, what are you... Shut up and lean on me, human. Xander pulled Ricky's arm over his shoulders. I'm not abandoning the man who saved my son. They staggered off into the tunnel's black maw, Ricky's blood splattering the stone floor. Ricky gritted his teeth against searing pain as he half stumbled, half fell from the tunnel mouth, Xander supporting his weight, while Quasar anxiously hovered. The dank, fetid air of the lower city hit them like a fist, the eternal twilight broken only by sputtering chemlights and the occasional flare of illicit plasma. Moans, curses, and the clatter of ramshackle industry echoed through the labyrinthine warren. We need to get off the street, Xander growled, eyes darting to shadowed alcoves and flickering alleys. If the patrols... There. Quasar pointed a trembling claw at a battered door, a crude approximation of a medical sigil etched into the metal. Maybe they can help. Xander hauled Ricky toward the door, the human's blood slicking his scales. He pounded a meaty fist against the corroded steel. For a long moment, nothing. Then the scratching of bolts and the door cracked open, a pair of reptilian eyes glinting in the gap. What do you... Wait, is that a human? The door swung wide, revealing a hunched Iridian in stained rags, his scales dull and cracked with age. He waved them inside urgently, gaze sweeping the alley. Hurry before a patrol spots you. They stumbled into a dimly lit room, the air thick with the tang of blood and antiseptic. A dozen beings, a motley assortment of Iridian outcasts and off-worlders, looked up from ramshackle cots. In the center, a group of scaly humanoids clustered around a stained table, makeshift medical instruments clutched in clawed hands. Tracks? Xander muttered, unconsciously moving Quasar behind him. Careful, they're... In need of your help, the lead Trax interrupted smoothly, his yellow eyes fixing on Ricky's ruined leg. As you are in need of ours. I am Kaz. The Trax moved with efficient grace, stripping away Ricky's charred pants, examining the ugly wound. Ricky clenched his jaw, fighting to stay conscious as they cleaned and dressed the injury with surprising skill. Our people were once renowned healers, Kaz said, glimpsing Ricky's surprise. Before the Iridians uplifted us. Gratitude is our way. But... His gaze cut to the plasma rifle slung over Xander's shoulder. In this place, nothing is free. Xander's grip tightened on the weapon, then relaxed. Slowly he unslung the rifle and handed it to Kaz. The Trax leader inclined his head. Over the next hours, as Ricky mended, he learned of the Trax's plight, a once proud species now reduced to dregs, clinging to survival in the Iridian Empire's rotting underbelly. But in that desperation, a grim determination had taken root. The overlords grow complacent, bloated on the fruits of our labors, Kaz snarled, working feverishly to modify a salvaged industrial laser, turning a mining tool into a weapon of war. They think us broken. They think us cowed. But soon... The Tracks were planning to assault a Iridian armory, to seize the weapons that were their only hope of resistance. But Ricky saw the gaping flaws in their plan. The Iridian defenses would cut them to ribbons before they even reached the walls. "You can't do this," Ricky argued. "It's suicide. You're throwing your lives away for nothing." "And what would you have us do?" Kaz demanded, eyes blazing. "Cower in the dark until we waste away to nothing? To die on our knees as slaves?" Ricky met Kaz's defiant glare, then looked away. Beyond the Tracks' hideout, the eternal night of the lower city waited, thick with hopelessness and despair. He closed his eyes, remembering the charred bodies of his comrades. The cities turned to ash and cinder, the dead, empty void where Earth used to be. "No," Ricky said softly. "You're right. Anything is better than living as slaves." He straightened, ignoring the scream of pain from his injured leg. "But if you're going to do this, do it smart. I have a plan." The Tracks compound was a hive of activity as Ricky laid out his scheme. The armory's automated defenses were nigh impregnable, but all Iridian military systems had one fatal flaw. They could be accessed by human biosignatures, a legacy of the Empire's reliance on human slave labor in their war machine. "I can get into the control hub. Disable the guns," Ricky said, tapping a crude schematic. "Give you a fighting chance to get inside. Get to the weapons." "The human's plan is madness," Xander protested. "He'll be killed before he even reaches the door." "No more mad than assaulting the place head-on," Kaz countered. "I say we do it." Quasar clutched Ricky's arm, eyes wide and frightened. "I don't want you to go," the boy whispered. "I don't want you to die." Ricky clasped Quasar's small hand in his own. "I have to do this, kid, or a lot more people are going to die." Night had fallen over the armory, the looming walls bristling with gun emplacements and scanning arrays. Ricky crouched in the shadows. Kaz and the other Tracks fighters fanned out behind him. Xander had Quasar tucked close, a stolen rifle clutched white-knuckled in his hands. "Remember," Ricky murmured into his comm bead, "wait for my signal. When those guns go down, hit them with everything you've got." Ricky tensed, then sprinted from cover, darting and rolling as a hail of plasma rounds stitched the ground behind him. He slammed into the ferrocrete wall, heart hammering against his ribs. The armory loomed above him, a hulking behemoth of metal and death. With a deep breath, Ricky slapped his palm against the bioscanner. For a moment, nothing. Then, with a soft chime, the reinforced door slid open. Ricky plunged into the dim corridor, sprinting for the control room. He burst into the hub and frantically worked the console, Iridian glyphs flashing under his fingers. With a low whine, the automated defenses powered down. Ricky keyed his comm. "Guns are down, go now!" From outside came the shouts of the Tracks, the staccato bark of gunfire. Ricky whirled to join the attack and found himself staring down the barrel of a plasma rifle. A dozen Iridian soldiers filled the room, weapons trained on his chest. "Did you really think it would be so easy, human?" the Iridian commander sneered. "That we wouldn't be watching, waiting?" On the monitors, Ricky watched in dawning horror as hidden emplacements sprang to life, mowing down the attacking Tracks in merciless crossfires. He saw Kaz, rifle blazing defiantly, cut down in a hail of plasma bolts. Xander, shielding a terrified Quasar, overwhelmed and dragged away by Iridian troops. The commander chuckled darkly, savoring Ricky's anguish. The doll was a stroke of genius, really. The boy never suspected it was recording his every move, transmitting every treasonous plan. He waved a clawed hand, dismissively. "Take this filth to the interrogation cells. We'll learn the full extent of this resistance." The cell was a pit of darkness and misery, timeless in its horror. Ricky huddled in a corner, shivering from cold, hunger, and the pain of his wounds, old and new. His Iridian tormentors had been brutally thorough, but he had revealed nothing, clinging to his defiance like a drowning man to driftwood. Then, after an eternity or a day, they came for him, not the interrogators with their knives and needles, but a full squad of armed soldiers. They dragged him from the cell into a light that seared his eyes. "The human traitor Ricky Grant," a voice boomed, "having been found guilty of crimes against the Iridian state, is hereby sentenced to death." Ricky blinked, his vision clearing. He stood on a gallows, a seething crowd of Iridians below screaming for his blood. And there, at the front, Quasar and Xander, battered but alive, flanked by guards. Quasar was weeping openly, his small frame shaking. Ricky met his gaze, trying to pour a lifetime of unsaid things into that one look. The executioner stepped forward, noose in hand. Ricky braced himself, determined to meet his end with the same defiance with which he had lived. Suddenly, Quasar wrenched free of his guards and screamed, his voice raw with grief and rage, "Zephyr lives!" The crowd erupted into chaos. Cloaked figures burst from the massive bodies, plasma rifles spitting blue fire. Xander smashed an elbow into his captor's throat and snatched his weapon, unleashing a barrage of bolts at the gallows. Ricky dove from the platform, snatching a fallen rifle and spraying covering fire. All around him, the hidden resistance burst from the crowd, Iridians and Trax and a dozen other species united in their hate for the Empire. Ricky sprinted for Quasar, scooping up the boy and shielding him as he ran. From the corner of his eye he saw Xander, a one-man army, plasma rifle flashing as he cut down soldier after soldier. Then a bolt found its mark, punching through Xander's chest in a spray of blood. Quasar screamed, fighting Ricky's grip, desperate to reach his fallen father. But Ricky held firm, tears streaking his face as he bore Quasar away, vanishing into the churning mob. Hours later, a stolen shuttle tore through the void, Iridian space dwindling behind it. In the cockpit, Ricky sat numb, staring at the infinite starfield. Beside him, Quasar wept, broken and lost. "Where are we going?" the boy asked, his voice small and thick with tears. Ricky reached out, gripping Quasar's shoulder. "Earth," he said, his voice hard as iron. "We're going to get help. We're going to keep fighting for your father, for Zephyr, for everyone." He turned to the viewport, jaw set with grim determination. The stars stretched before them, a billion points of light and hope. If we don't, who will? You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.